Ooh, what mics is it going to use? I guess I better test that first. I'm doing a thing! I'm taking the Southwest Chief, which is one of Amtrak's longest routes between Chicago and LA, and I'm actually taking it back to Chicago. I took it out to LA and then took the Pacific Surfliner from LA to San Diego to visit my brother for a spell. The reason why I had to go on this trip ended up not coming to fruition, so I was
welcome aboard. This is me, your cafe attendant. The cafe is open.
Cafe's open. Wear shoes. No cash.
The center of the train.
Is that all?
Please make sure when coming to the cafe you are wearing a mask and shoes.
Shoes.
We have chips, cookies, candies, beer, wine, cocktails, cheeseburgers, hot dogs, vegan tamales.
I've heard this many times if you can't
and
tell.
more. If you're interested in anything to eat or drink, come on down to the cafe, lower level of the observation car towards the center of the train.
Thank you, V. So, as I'm sure you know, I am not a travel vlogger. So this video is not going to be very polished, but this is Connextras. So, that's par for the course. So I am, as I said, taking the Southwest Chief in this video. I actually took it, almost a month ago at this point. But I am taking it, frankly, because I've always wanted to take a long distance train trip. And, well, I had a reason to do it, which ended up evaporating, but I'm still very glad I did. It's really changed my thoughts on a number of things, which I will be talking about more in talking head form. But on this trip, I did actually take it in a sleeping car. So I stayed in one of Amtrak's roomettes, which they used to call the economy bedroom. It's a very small space, but for one person, it's certainly fine. For two people, it might be fine. You'll have to think about that. I will show you the room itself in more detail with the camera. Like in person. Wow, at the time. I recorded video and I was talking and showing the room. That's what I mean. But what I'm going to do now in voiceover is actually show you the layout of the train, because I'm sure that many people, both in the US and out, are just not that familiar with Amtrak trains with sleepers. So I am on the top level right now, and I'm going between the roomettes. So there's a roomette on either side of the train. That also should give you an idea of how small they are. The passage between cars is on the top level. There is no passage between cars on the lower level. Now, I am now going past the full-size bedrooms. So those are the deluxe bedrooms. They still only sleep two people, but you have most of the width of the train, so obviously it's a much more comfortable accommodation. This is passing between cars, which is obviously very fun on rough track. Highly recommend it. And so again, going through the roomettes, and then the stairway is in the middle of the train, which goes down to the lower level, which I will be taking shortly. I'm going to do a cut here. Cut. Here's looking out the window again past the deluxe roomettes. I was in the car at the very front of the train on the way to LA. There's also a coffee station here. Our car attendant made coffee every morning. Ironically, that is a percolator, so it was percolated coffee, but it was pretty good and obviously fresh every day, so it wasn't the best coffee, but it was decent. So this is the very narrow staircase to get to the lower level of the train, which is where my roomette was on the way to California. On the way back, I was on the upper level, and I'm very glad I got to experience both, because there are very big pros and cons to each, and I really couldn't tell you which I would prefer. But this was my room. It was room 13, and this is the window that I was staring out for the majority of the journey. So the thing about the lower level, which is obviously a huge drawback, is your views are severely limited. You are barely off the ground on the lower level. As a matter of fact, I will throw up that picture again so you can see where the lower level windows are. Literally, if someone's standing on the platform, they're higher up than you are sitting in the chair. So anything that gets near to the train at all blocks your view. So the views on the lower level are not as good. on the upper level. They just aren't. You can see how anything that's anywhere near the train, any sort of brush or an embankment, it just completely obliterates your view, and all you see is what's close to the train. It's much less of a problem on the upper level because you're about, 8 feet higher than the person below you. So that's the biggest drawback of the lower level. But the benefit is it feels very, very, very private. So this is a different shot that I took at night, so you can't see out the window. And on the lower level is where most of the restrooms are. There are 3 restrooms on the lower level and 1 upstairs. And you also have the dressing room and shower. So this is a fairly large space to change, and the shower is actually a pretty reasonable size as well. I have now crossed off taken a shower on a train from my list of odd things to do. There's plenty of room in the shower. It's just bathing while on a moving vehicle that's negotiating a curve is strange. But here is the bathroom. Hello. Basically your typical airplane bathroom, except it's on a train and it's not quite so cramped. But then, so there's the exit door again. I actually boarded the train directly onto this car. There's some luggage storage there, so I just kept my carry-on there most of the time. And then you have the stairs up to the second level. And again, passage between cars is only on the second level. But now these are the bedrooms on the lower level. And I was here again in 13, and you have the privacy curtain. And you might think the bathrooms, you would feel and hear people coming in and out all the time. You really don't. Most people on the upper level use that bathroom up there if it's available. So man, this just felt very, very private. Plus I was at the farthest end. So the only person I ever noticed moving about was the person opposite me, and that was empty for much of the journey. So the lower level feels very, very private. All right, and now I want to show what the journey was like from my car to the dining car and the lounge car. I had to go through another sleeping car, and I would have started from below, but I didn't show walking up the stairs. So I have to go through a second sleeping car. If the train gets longer, you might have to go through more cars to get here. But they use the dining car as a buffer between coach and the rest of the train. So you have to go through the dining car to get to the lounge car. The lounge car is where like coach and the sleepers intermingle. And then the dining car, which is only for people in the sleepers, or at least currently, they don't offer reservations for people in coach. That serves as like the buffer between the two. And so obviously, if you've never experienced trains before, going between cars can be a little fun. And this is the dining car, and I'm going to be skipping forward because you can see these people at the end here. But obviously the dining car is for dining. It is the car where you have food. Okay, and skipping past those people, the lounge car is not very exciting during the evening because you can't see anything, but it is there for people to use all the time. During the quiet hours of the train, they want people to have phone conversations here in the lounge car. So it's always available to people on the train. I did notice there were a couple people sleeping on some of the longer chairs, and the conductors didn't seem to mind. I don't know if they would if the train were busier, because it really wasn't that busy. But this is the lounge car. This is a wonderful place to be. I spent a lot of time in here. And I was able to, for instance, I can grab that picture and throw it up. I had coffee in the lounge car at sunrise the first day going out through Kansas. It was a lovely, lovely experience. Okay, so if that's the last interruption, which it may very well not be, the reason why I had to come out here ended up not mattering, but I had already moved this ticket back once, and I wanted to take this train trip, and I wanted to take it when the days were still longer. Already they've gotten much shorter, and much to my disappointment, I saw virtually none of Arizona. On the way to Los Angeles, we ended up getting a delay in Kansas City. We were behind a couple of hours. I don't know if that would have mattered though, because really we went through Arizona in the middle of the night. even if we were on time, because the train arrives in Los Angeles at 8 in the morning. And then on the way back, we have been on time. We're a little bit behind now, but until we were on time up until sunrise, and we were almost out of Arizona. So a bit of a bummer that didn't really get to see anything of Arizona, but did get to see pretty much all of New Mexico, which is very, very pretty. If I remember the route correctly, we are about to be climbing mountains, and I guess these are still the Rockies. They would be, right? I don't know. Anyway, we're about to climb some mountains. This route only has one tunnel, unless I slept through another one. That's a bit of a bummer. But yeah, anyway, I was a little hesitant to make the trip because, COVID is still a thing. But I got to thinking, I've been vaccinated. I'm going to bring, I might have already showed this, but I have N95 respirators now that they're easy to get. And I'm wearing that. The only time I'm not is when I'm in here in the room, which even then I kind of feel like, should I be? But I'll get to my thoughts on that a little bit later. But and then also during dining service. And that was a thing that when I first got on the train, I was wondering if I was able to take my meals to go and eat in my room, because I didn't really want to eat with a bunch of people in the dining car, because I had heard that Amtrak had resumed quote-unquote normal dining service and they would be filling all tables. So I was like, I don't want that. I mean, I'm an introvert as it is, so I don't want that, period, but I especially don't want that now. But it turns out they are spacing the dinner or the dining services apart quite a lot, so I always had a table to myself and the dining car was never really that full, so I wasn't really worried about that. But you've spent a lot of time in the lounge car, which is just a great place to be. And then always have my mask with me, because especially then you're mingling with, in the sleepers, there are only 22 rooms, if I remember correctly. 14, 15, 16, 17, and 5. Yeah, 22 rooms. Most of which only hold 2 people. One holds 4. So I think it's 44 people, or 46 people maximum, but most of the roomettes like I'm in now only have 1 person. So I'm sharing this car with maybe 14 people. So that's actually part of why I realized, I think I don't need to worry about taking this trip, because unlike an airport, I didn't go through a massive humanity to get on the train at any point. Even Los Angeles Union Station is even less of, it's hardly indoors, which I didn't realize. Very surprising. The platforms are basically above the station itself, and I was surprised by that. But anyway, so overall this has felt like a pretty safe way to travel, and it's just really slow. But let me tell you, I have enjoyed this so much. I brought a lot of stuff to read and do. Less to do and more to watch. I've basically just been looking outside the entire time. Tonight, once we get out into Colorado, we're not going through any of this route. We end up in the southeastern part of Colorado, and that's it. And so it's not super exciting. It basically looks like Kansas. So really, once we're over the mountains and into Colorado, there's not going to be a whole lot to see. But certainly pretty much all of New Mexico has been really, really pretty. Then that's the suburbs, I guess you would say, of Albuquerque right there. So definitely more of an urban environment than you see the pretty mesas and whatnot. But big scrap heap. Oh, my closet just opened. But yes, stop opening. I have, this has really changed my perspective on a number of things, and I have a lot of thoughts regarding rail travel. And I think, as most of you know, in the US we do trains badly. And one of the just quintessential ways you know that is if you want to take a sleeper from Chicago to LA, it's very expensive. You're looking to at least pay $600 one way. It's not as bad if you do 2 people to a roomette, because the fare structure is each person pays a coach fare and then there's an additional fee for the room. So if you have 2 people sharing a roomette, the second person only costs between $125 to $250 more. But certainly if you're traveling by yourself and you want a roomette like I am in, that in a lot of ways you could say this is objectively a terrible idea, because you're on the train for at least 42 hours and you spent way more than you would to fly. But the experience is just so great, and the food has been fantastic, like far and away exceeding my expectations. I'm glad that they aren't doing the to-go stuff that they were doing, because everybody was saying it's pretty mediocre. But I've tried, well, I shouldn't say I've tried most of the entrees, but at least half of them in every category. But there's only 4. I don't know how often they change the menu, but there's 4 dinner options, 4 lunch options, 4 breakfast options. So if you take this train both directions, you will experience the entire menu if you don't repeat something. But yeah, I just wanted to share that I'm doing this. And I think if you have to say my thoughts about train travel, which in the United States, which I think I'll probably do a lot of voiceover to talk about this, is the biggest thing that we don't have in the US, because we don't get vacation time, are just, in general, our society is set up to not give people free time. We can go on and on about why that is, but just in general, very few people would want to spend 2 to 4 days traveling somewhere because they don't have the time. So even if rail could get cheaper, I don't think it's going to get more popular. And I wish that we could change that, but I don't think we can change that unless we start getting more vacation time guaranteed for people, because I absolutely understand 5 nights in LA becomes a 9-night trip if you want to take the train there and back. So, and that's nearly a 100% increase, 80%, increase of time. And so even though I think those 4 days are incredibly enjoyable, barring delays, because those are frustrating, that's still a lot of time investment. And I understand why, compared to getting on a plane and making the flight in 4 hours, even with the added pain of an airport, it's a tiny fraction of the time. And it's usually cheaper. And it doesn't matter that you don't get the niceties like meal service, because you're there in 5-6 hours. But anyway, if people had more time to spend, I feel like this would be more popular. One thing that I didn't realize, I'm in a Surfliner. They don't run these trains on the East Coast because they have tunnel clearance issues. So these are double-decker cars. Amtrak's entire fleet consists of 120 of these sleeper cars. They have some weird edge case cars, like they have the deluxe sleepers, which only have full-size rooms on the top. I don't remember how many they have, but even if you want to count best case scenario, there's 170 sleeper cars. And if you consider that this train has 2 sleeper cars on it, and there are 6 of them, I imagine, running concurrently, I don't think the same train turns around and comes back the same day. I believe they get serviced. But I don't know. If any of you do, please do tell. I know I'm not on the same train that I was on when I came out to LA, but I do have the same service crew. Interestingly enough, our schedules lined up. But anyway, the point I'm making is that 120, this one route takes up 10% or more of that 120 cars. And I know that there aren't that many long distance routes on Amtrak, but it's still just I know that they will sometimes do up to 4 sleeper cars, I think, and sometimes they might do more than that. But it's just really annoying that because the car I'm in is probably about 40 years old, And in all this time, rail travel has continued to just be like the dumb option. And so they don't need any more cars than that. Because they don't need any more cars than that, the scale's not going to get better. It's always going to stay expensive. And it's just me wishing that it could get cheaper, because it's a really great experience. And it kind of stinks that like you have to be both relatively money wealthy and time wealthy to take this train. And it's really a bummer, especially because you get to see so much of the country that you just, I've never seen, even though I've been to California several times, I've never seen what this part of the country actually looks like, because I've been flying. Now I've actually been able to see it. It's really, really quite lovely. So, yes to train travel. I don't know if I'm going to go so far as to call myself a rail evangelist. And I've definitely never been a rail fan. A proper rail fan, I should say. Because there are things about trains that certainly interest me. But I would not qualify. There's definitely a lot of stuff I don't know and don't follow regarding rail that I know I'm not a rail fan. But so even though I think I'm probably maybe edging towards a rail evangelist, as in we should have more rail travel in the United States, I do understand why it's not popular. It's just, but I think it could be. I think it easily could be, but it has to get cheaper. Hang on to those hats, everybody, because I'm about to get a little political here. Spicy. I can hear those in the back shouting about how Amtrak is terrible and it's a waste of taxpayer money because it doesn't make money. Look, in the US, we desperately need to have a conversation about what the public sector is and does. That sentence, that it's a waste of taxpayer money because it doesn't make money, is nonsense. It's a false premise. The government is not a profit-seeking organization, despite what you may have heard. Now, with Amtrak specifically, it's complicated. It's operated as if it were a for-profit business because it legally has to, and in that way, and many others, it's saddled by strange requirements and so has a lot of inefficiencies. I agree that Amtrak has many problems, but I, for one, would like to spend the money to fix them. The overwhelming majority of my tax dollars are not going to Amtrak, and it's really perplexing and frankly annoying how much Amtrak, and to some extent the Postal Service, lives rent-free in the heads of folks as an example of government waste, when there are so many much bigger fish to fry, and those fish don't even provide a service to you and me. But here's the bottom line. Amtrak is almost entirely owned by the federal government, and so for all intents and purposes, it's in the public sector. And public sector entities definitionally cannot seek a profit. They might operate with a surplus, but if that happens, that extra money just goes back to you and me. This obsessiveness over whether Amtrak or the USPS make money is a question wrongly put because we, the citizenry, are their shareholders. The people who benefit when these organizations succeed are us, not some private owner who wants profit out of it. And by the way, from the perspective of a person paying for a service, profit is inefficiency. It's waste. One could offer a product or service at its actual cost, you know? Think about that for a sec. Healthcare. We can argue for days over whether or not Amtrak is a smart use of public money, but it should also be noted that they still get the vast majority of their operating budget from fares that riders of the system pay. But I am absolutely okay with my tax dollars working to fill the gap, because Amtrak provides a meaningful public service, and I'd love to see them granted more funds to purchase more and newer equipment to expand their service and lower its cost. I would gladly be taxed a little more to that end. The entire reason Amtrak exists is because the freight railroads couldn't justify operating passenger service, but they were, and still are, profit-seeking organizations. Sometimes profit isn't what matters, and the fact that we equate profitability with justification for existence in this country is tremendously sad. I've yet to see the interstate highway system turn a profit, but people seem insistent that Amtrak has to. This is way deeper than I planned to go here, but it sure would be nice if we decided to do things collectively and were proud of it for once. Sure is something that people get all worked up about Amtrak and not like the military-industrial complex. How's that F-35 working out for us? Anyway, back to the show. I do understand why it's not popular. It's just... But I think it could be. I think it easily could be. But it has to get cheaper. And absolutely, doing this route in coach, I mean, you can do it, and it's not that expensive if you do get a coach ticket. And you can use the lounge car for, unless the train is packed, as long as you like. And so you don't have to be glued to your seat for 42 hours, but you still don't have a place to sleep. And even then, in the roomette, I'm not getting the best sleep I've ever had here. I keep waking up quite frequently. And I would say tonight I'm going to be taking a sleep aid to see if I can get a little better sleep before I arrive back home. But let me show you what this room is like, and I might do some of this in voiceover. I'll definitely do some voiceover because I've taken a lot of video of what different parts of the journey look like, but most of that happened on the way westbound. Probably not going to take a lot more video now. I did take a couple clips, but as I said, we're going through the mountains. Once we're through the mountains and we come back down and we're in it's not prairie, but eastern Colorado, whatever that is considered, it's going to look like that until it becomes corn, and then we're going to be in Chicago. So that's pretty much what happens. But anyway, let me stop recording and turn the camera around, etc. I was being followed. Hello, this is my room, room 7. Hopefully you saw that on the sign. So this is a roomette, which is a very small space, but for one person and even two, I think it works pretty well. So the way it's configured, that is somebody else's roomette right across the hall from me. So you have kind of, the way that I'm saying is, I'm equating it to, you kind of have the width of 2 coach seats, because this aisle space is about the same, but it's a little bit different. You do have, there's a window here, but because, and I understand why people are like this, they want the privacy, but everybody's keeping their windows shut all the time. Ooh, I wonder if I did that. So while you do have these windows which would allow you to see across to the other side of the train, for the most part everybody has their curtains closed. So I don't have a wide angle lens on this camera, so unfortunately this is not going to work well to show you everything. But right here, this is the second bed or berth or bunk or whatever you want to call it. So as you can see, it is stored, there's me, in a 45-degree angle. My head hits it like this is, there's not a lot of room between my head and the ceiling. Can you see? That doesn't really work. You can kind of see. Not a lot of room. So this, on that 45-degree angle, I can't stand up for more than about 18 inches into this room, half a meter or so before I hit this. But what's nice is during the day you can use this to store your bags or whatever. So I've got my laptop bag up here. They also keep the bedding for the lower bunk up here. So if you're not using this as a bed, you have it as an option for kind of like overhead storage for relatively thick things. I mean, this is not small by any means, but they do get a little bit crushed. Just want to be wary of that. And then down here you have 2 seats. One faces the other. This back cushion keeps popping forward on this seat. I will say that the 2 train cars that I've been on, this one is in worse shape. Everything is a little bit rougher around the edges, but it's still functional. Then you have the tiny little area here where you can use it kind of like a nightstand, side table type. Well, not a nightstand, but side table here. This is one of my big critiques of Amtrak. They do not really clean these at all. I was seeing with different travel videos regarding taking Amtrak, they recommended bringing wipes because these will be dirty. And that's not really the attendant's responsibility, the people that are with us, because, you know, these trains, my understanding is they go, because I saw the train that I took here get pulled away to some sort of maintenance area in LA. And just stuff like that. They really need to get better at that sort of thing. But I understand that if they're trying to turn a train around quickly, that's not super possible. But definitely should see some improvement there. But there's the other chair and the pillows. A lot of things that I had seen suggested that this is cramped for 2 people during the day. I don't know if I would call it that, because I saw some people saying that you're gonna hit your knees. My knee, if I'm sitting upright, it's barely extended off the edge of the cushion. So we wouldn't be bumping knees together unless we were reclining the seats. So I really think it's a pretty decent space to be with another person. You have your power outlet there. So there's my phone charger, which is not for a OnePlus phone anymore because I'm kind of done with them at this point, but it's a higher amperage charger, so I brought it with me to charge all my other fun goodies. And then you've got reading lights. Up top are that's the reading light for the second bunk. So they have a light up there. And then behind my head here, you have your control panel for the ceiling lighting. So there you go. Got your ceiling lights for at night. And if you hit night, a blue LED lights up in there for your night light. Although, quite honestly, if you can see, the curtains do not block 100% of the light. You're seeing the ceiling light in the hall. That's completely not necessary because you get a night light through the curtains. It's not like a bothersome amount of light by any means. It's just that adds nothing. They got your speaker for announcements. They do not make announcements after 10 o'clock. So from 10 p.m. to 6, you're kind of in the dark, which is actually a critique of mine because that delay we had in Kansas City happened in the middle of the night. And no one ever explained why we were delayed. Like, not, of course they didn't during the evening, but they didn't even say anything the next day. So it was kind of just like, we're 2 hours behind now. But we'll not talk about that. So then for the other side, this thing, it kind of works like a nightstand. This is why I got confused. During the evening for the person on the lower bunk. But what it really is, those are steps to get up to the top bunk. So that's the primary function of that thing. And honestly, it makes that seat feel narrower, even though the width of the actual seat itself is exactly the same, because you have that thing there. But I'm sitting in that seat because that's the forward motion. Although I've never been one particularly bothered by sitting backwards. But I know people, like I have 2 people in my family who absolutely cannot do that.
Hey, it's Voice Over Me once again, letting you know about a thing I totally forgot to mention. With the bed folded, this is what that looks like. So obviously it takes up the entire space of the room, and It's long enough for you to sleep on, absolutely. I think it's 6'6", which is very close to exactly 2 meters, and I'm about 6 feet tall, and so it's perfectly fine for me. But it's taking up almost all of the floor space in the room. So when the bed is down, you do not have a lot of space to move around. In fact, you basically only have enough room to sit on the bed and put on your shoes. So that does make getting into the top bunk certainly a challenge without disturbing the person below you. So while I do think this can work for 2 people, it's certainly going to be very close quarters, let's just put it that way. And if you are claustrophobic at all, certainly the top bunk, man, that is an experience. It is a very, very narrow mattress, and you cannot sit up. It's hard to get into. While you do have your own reading light, it's a very, very small space. And in fact, they include a net you can hook into the ceiling to keep you from rolling off the bed and onto the floor below you. So it's certainly for the economy minded, and I think it's doable, but certainly one person, I think, in a roomette is definitely easier to deal with. And then also, I just got this shot to show with the bed in the lowered position. It goes right to the headrests of the seats. So actually, you could put the top bed down and still have the space below you if you wanted to do it that way. But obviously, you can't stand, because that's right about it, something like chest height when you're coming into the room. So it's a very, very compact space. So certainly those of you that are bothered by that are not going to like it, but it is very functional for what it is. And I do admire the fact that they're able to get 14 of these in one train car. And honestly, I'd kind of like to see them build a train car which is nothing but roomettes, because then you could have 20 roomettes on the top floor with the other 4 down below. And then you're talking about a sleeper car that only has a very slightly smaller capacity than a coach car, which would be pretty cool if you ask me. And then the last thing, which is surprisingly useful, which few people have touted as such, is this closet. Now, an inconsistency between the 2 trains is that the first train I was on had a bit of carpet down here, and this one doesn't. So I just used a towel because there were towels up there. But you've not only got, it's wide enough to put a couple of coats. They give you a couple of hangers, but you can also put tons of stuff up there. I'm actually using it as a bookcase. I haven't read the sequel to An Absolutely Remarkable Thing yet, so I'm trying to reread the first one to get there. But I also have an iPad up there and some snacks behind it. So this, it's very narrow, but it's useful for a lot of stuff. And I got some more snacks down there. Very important. But yeah, in the winter, like if you were taking this train, taking the Zephyr, which goes to Denver, and you wanted your, you would want to bring a coat, because you do get fresh air breaks. And Denver is one of the stops. In fact, when we were just in Albuquerque, hang on a second. Just look at that. Man, that's so pretty. The clouds, the mountains. You don't get to see this stuff on an airplane. But anyway, what I was saying was, in Albuquerque, that is a service stop for the train. So we are there for quite a while because they refuel, water. I don't think they empty any of the holding tanks, but they basically do all the stuff they need to keep the train being a functional train. So that stop takes about a half hour, but then they also have multiple, depending on who's conducting, it's either a smoke break or a fresh air break. Pick your poison. And those are very brief, just 10-15 minutes at the most. But they do give you, it's nice to get off the train and take pictures of it, as I'm sure any rail fan would do many times. If I cut this part of the video out, I'm just reiterating that I do not consider myself to be a rail fan. I am nerdy about certain things regarding trains, but nowhere near to the point that I believe I could call myself a rail fan. There's a lot of stuff that I
have actually only learned on this journey because I got curious about it, like what trackside defect detectors are. Fascinating little bit of engineering and technology there, and now I know why I keep hearing no defects over the radio. I thought it was something about the train detecting problems with the track, but actually it's the track detecting problems with the train. Who'da thunk? But anyway, so now I might do some voiceover and show you some other clips, but yes, this is very fun, and if you have the means and time to do it, I'd say you definitely should. Maybe not this route. Supposedly the Zephyr is a lot prettier, especially because you go through the Rockies proper and go through Denver and whatnot. You also have the Moffett Tunnel, which takes 10 minutes to go through, so there's some more interesting stuff on the Zephyr. But the Southwest Chief is definitely still a great train ride. It's just that east of Colorado, well, really east of New Mexico, it gets pretty samey as you go through the Plain States. But you know, that's just, you're gonna get that on the Zephyr too. The Zephyr begins the same route as this train for the first few stops. It just keeps farther north to stay through Denver because it's going to the San Francisco Bay Area and not LA. But anyway, enough of me talking on the phone. Here's other stuff now.
Alright, so to end this video, rather than me keep talking and talking over a bunch of the footage that I took, I'm just going to show you a bunch of the footage that I took. But before I leave you in voice form, I wanted to show that this part of the journey is not the Southwest Chief. This is the Pacific Surfliner. That train goes between Los Angeles and San Diego with lots of stops along the way. And I'm taking this shot because I was hoping I could get a great ocean reveal because the train is right now turning south to follow the ocean. But unfortunately, and I didn't realize this was going to be the case, it was rather gray looking, but it was still very pretty. I was just surprised that it looked this gray because inland it was very, very sunny. But apparently this is very common on the coast in this part to just be gray. And it was like this both on the way to San Diego and returning back to Los Angeles. But it was still kind of a cool shot because you can see those people on their jet skis skiing their jets off in the water. Fun stuff. But what's really interesting about the Pacific Surfliner, and as I'm recording this, I'm going to be skipping around because once we pass this beach, then there's a bunch of homes between the tracks and the water, which kind of ruined the view here. But I didn't realize how much, well, not only how much of the Pacific Surfliner is along the coast, but also how close it is. I mean, you can tell just from here, it's right next to the ocean. But this isn't even as close as it gets. There are some stretches where it's basically just some rocks and then the ocean. Here's all those houses I was talking about. And this is farther forward, so you can see that there's a little bit of a sandy area, tons of people on the beach, but then it's just some rocks and the train tracks. And I had no idea the train got this close to the ocean. It's a really pretty journey. And the thing about the Pacific Surfliner is it and many other Amtrak routes in California are kind of this weird mix between long distance and transit. So Amtrak has specific rolling stock for California, and these are the California car. They're very much like the Superliner that I was on coming from Chicago, but they have double pairs of automatic sliding doors and bigger vestibules and bigger staircases to get to the second floor because functionally they're an awful lot like transit. But at the same time, they also go longer distances. So you'll see people come on and off only going about, 20 miles rather than the whole distance. But then there's also people that are taking it the whole way. So the Pacific Surfliner and a number of trains in California are, like I said, this weird in-between place where it's not quite transit, but it's not quite long distance rail. It's both. And then this last shot here just shows, this is where it was particularly close to the water, there was some sort of beach on the other side. You can see these tiny little railroad crossings that we zoom by that are just for pedestrians. You'll see one coming up shortly, I think. Yeah, right there. And it's really a cool sight. Here it was a little sunny, so it was a nicer view. But the Pacific Surfliner, if you live in LA, it's worth taking this trip to San Diego and back just for these sights. It's a very, very pretty train trip, and it's pretty cheap too. You can take it. Oh, I don't know what the cheapest fares are. I think it was $26 one way when I booked it, so quite reasonable. And it takes about 3 hours or so to get from LA to San Diego on the train. And so now I will shut up and let you enjoy the rest of this footage as it exists. I don't really remember where all this was. I wasn't taking great notes. So sorry, but this is along the route, obviously, and you'll get to see a large bit of variety of what you can see on this train ride. Lots of very pretty terrain once you get into New Mexico, and it's not like Colorado and Kansas have nothing to see. And in fact, it's a very uniquely different terrain from what I'm used to in the Midwest. It's just, it's still just a bunch of flat land with no real mountains or anything. It's just different. Rather than fields of corn, a lot of Kansas looked kind of like what you're seeing now, if memory serves correctly, but it was still very pretty, just not the star of the show, I would say. But anyway, thank you for watching this long-winded video with my Amtrak hot take, and I will see you at some other point. Whenever that may be.